and we've talked about this recently, still not cleared for contact, and we're just running out of time. I think it could still happen. We don't know the detail of the conversations that are going on, but coming off a multi-ligament knee injury, player's still not cleared for contact. And still, when you think of the scope of time since his surgery was in December. So a lot less time to recover from a more complex knee injury than what Deshaun Watson had. He was injured halfway through the season or fairly close to that. And Carson Wentz, although he's done a great job with his rehab, there's still, to me, a big hurdle to clear. And what you wonder, again, the concern level is not that he hasn't, quote unquote, healed from the injury, but that graft is still maturing. It takes a while for that to happen. And you have to stress it to what you do in the game. Even when he's ready to come back, is he going to be ready for 4 quarters of football? So I think it may take a while for you to get to the Carson Wentz who you're thinking about when you draft fantasy-wise.
The implication here, obviously, is that you have week 1 concerns, Stephania. And maybe more than that, but clearly you think it's no sure thing that he's ready in 9 days when the Eagles play.
I don't think they fully know.
I mean, your concern level is 2.
Right.
I mean, on a scale of 4. I mean, that's half. I mean, right. when you have Deshaun Watson at a 0, Field, I lowered him in my ranks to QB 8 yesterday, partially because of this, partially because the skilled players around him, and we're going to get to him later in the show, but Alshon Jeffrey already banged up. Jay Ajayi banged up. I mean, there's something that just makes me a little bit nervous. And again, we just talk about touchdown rate and regression, right? I mean, Carson Wentz's was almost 8 last year. It was 7 point something. I want to say 7.4, something like that. Thirsty Kyle, look that up for me. But I want to say it was 7.6, 7.4, something like that. Again, I think Carson Wentz is a special player, but I moved Andrew Luck ahead of him, Stephania. Do you think I'm crazy for that? I have Luck at 7,
I don't think you're
Wentz
crazy.
at 8.
I don't think you're crazy. And I just want to point out that this is not a setback with Carson Wentz. If you talked to me months ago, you know that I had said it was going to come down to the wire, and I think we're exactly where we should be.
Stephania, running backs also have there's a notable name of injuries on the running back list, I should say. And let's begin in Minnesota. Most people, I believe, say Dalvin Cook back injured in week 4. I'd imagine he's a 1 at worst.
Right. I actually have him as a 2. So this is 2 out of 3. Remember, even there's 0, and then there's 1, 2, and 3. And I have him as a 2 out of 3, mostly because we haven't seen enough in the preseason for me to feel fully confident. As I think the ACL tears are particularly hard on the running backs. Why? Because that sharp stop, that deceleration, plant, and pivot is how ACL injuries happen. And this is what running backs have to do over and over and over again. Now, by all accounts, he's been looking great in practice, but we haven't seen him on the field in game situations barely at all. Played a few snaps, had 2 rushes for 1 yard, targeted once, didn't record a catch, and that's it. Normally, you would expect to see a player ramp up his activity. My question is, can Dalvin Cook, I think everybody talks about the workload he had last year and how great he was when he got hurt. No question. But is he going to come back, and you think he's really just going to assume that level of productivity after so little game action and still kind of reacclimating that knee to playing in football, playing in a regular football game? We've heard about Latavius Murray maybe taking some of the work, and I think in the early games, that's entirely possible. So my level of concern is the position he plays, more vulnerable, coming off this type of injury, and being able to show us that he can get through 4 quarters. He's not going to fatigue or have soreness. We just don't know that.
And, by the way, playing behind a banged-up offensive line field. They're having issues there, too.
Yeah, they sure are. They just recently traded for Brett Jones from the Giants, I should say. A ton of injuries on the offensive line. Really the only roster blemish in Minnesota. I feel personally as though I still am going to see Dalvin Cook go off the board by the end of round 2 in almost every draft, and I'm okay and I'm comfortable with it myself. I think it does lead to an important question, though, about handcuff running backs. Mm-hmm. I think there are 2 ways to categorize handcuff running backs. There are those that are most important because of the injury concerns in front of the players in front of them. In this case, Latavius Murray, important because of Dalvin Cook's injury. There are those who are most valuable because you think they're a really good player who just happens to be stuck behind an even better player. John Kelly in Los Angeles, for example.
Yeah.
They both are handcuffs. They both have different value. Speaking simply through the injury concern handcuffs, is there a more valuable one this year than Latavius Murray to you?
Maybe James Conner, just because Le'Veon Bell has dealt with injury issues in his past. Mm-hmm. And you're going to use a higher, obviously, whether you play in an auction format or a draft, it's going to cost you more draft capital to acquire Le'Veon Bell on your fantasy team than it will Dalvin Cook. But yeah, I mean, I think your point is well taken. I think Latavius Murray has standalone value, even if you don't have Dalvin Cook on your roster. I mean, I think he is going to be more of a timeshare than people think here. He's a very good goal line back. I want to say he's, over the last 3 years, I think he's top 3 in the NFL. Thirsty Kyle, check me on this. I believe he is top 3 in the NFL over the last 3 years in terms of goal-to-go rushing touchdowns. Is that right? Thirsty Kyle's looking it up. So, I mean, he's a very good goal line back, and we talked about this a couple of days ago when we did the Vikings in Double Trouble Field. You know, Stephania, we talked about this, that the idea is, Latavius Murray wasn't healthy at the beginning of last year, and how much of the fact that Dalvin Cook got so much workload in those first, handful of games, the 3 or 4 games before he got injured, was because Latavius Murray wasn't really available.
Right. He was coming off of ankle surgery, and I think there was just this expectation he'd jump in and be fine, and he was still really working his way back for the first few weeks.
So, I mean, I don't think it's a full-blown committee field, but I think you could easily see, could it be a 70-30, a 65-35 split here with Latavius Murray getting more 50-50 at the goal line?
Matthew, I have Latavius Murray was number 1 over the last 3 years at goal to go. So
there you go. For me, he was top 3. I was right.
Look at that.
Nice job. Let's hear it from me.
Well, then I guess we are on to wide receivers then.
Yep.
Natural tee up there. And Stephania, we go to Seattle again, where Doug Baldwin has missed much of training camp, if not all of it, really. But the Seahawks, ever the optimist, as you said, seem to be pretty optimistic.
Right. I know. Pete Carroll saying he's going to be ready for week 1. He's increased his volume of work and practice. I still rate Doug Baldwin a concern level 1, and it goes back to the thing that put him on the injury list at the start of the preseason: knee soreness, and they immediately said he was going to miss multiple weeks. So that tells me that the reason they gave doesn't quite jive with the amount of time missed and the fact that he was taking it really slow for the first couple of weeks. Where's the concern? It's that it could come up again during the season. It appears that he's going to be ready to go week 1. We know the talent, and Doug Baldwin has been a very durable guy across his career. But these things, once they start, especially with the knee, sometimes it can be something that nags at you as the season progresses.
Traditionally a slow starter field because Russell Wilson is traditionally a slow starter. But my belief is that Doug Baldwin enters the best fantasy opportunity season of his career with no Paul Richardson, no Jimmy Graham there, and no real obvious guy that they brought in to take a tremendous amount of target share away from a guy that has the second most receiving touchdowns over the last 3 years. Only Antonio Brown is better.
Seriously, if Doug Baldwin were to miss week 1, like if it were to happen, who amongst the pass catchers in Seattle would you rank as the top player? Tyler Lockett?
Maybe. Marshall. Maybe. I guess Lockett and Marshall. Honestly, like it's
crazy here.
It is. Yeah. It's they're still going to sort that out. But it's one of the reasons why I am so high on Doug Baldwin this year. I have him as my wide receiver 8.
Yeah, you've got him way up there, Matthew, higher than the consensus ranks, I believe, by like 7 spots.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Stephania's tight ends, and we begin with Evan Engram. By the way, just as an aside, it's a good thing that we haven't had to discuss Rob Gronkowski and injury concerns at all this season. Most dominant player at his position in the NFL.
Wood everywhere.
Evan Engram, we talked about him quite a bit yesterday, Stephania. Just an update on where he's at.
Making progress through the concussion return to play protocol. We mentioned that he's was seen doing some light cardio work, so you know that he has been progressing. But as we often mention on the podcast field, it's a non-linear progression. Yep. Remember, when you're coming back from concussion. Now, we're not going to see him in the Giants' final preseason game, and the expectation would be that he's available for week 1. But I rank him at a 1 because these things are non-linear and they're not totally predictable, and so you have a little bit of concern whenever there's a head injury.
I have it on good authority that Odell Beckham Jr. bought Evan Engram and the entire tri-state area dinner last night. Congrats to Odell Beckham Jr. on his new, well-deserved contract extension.
Absolutely.